What happens when comedy, the great truth-teller, speaks its mind on a stage owned by the very subject of its critique? What unfolds when the jester whose entire career has been built on skewering the powerful comes face to face with a new kind of king, a techno-monarch, who not only rules a corporate empire, but also owns the digital public square itself? This isn't a hypothetical riddle. It's the story of a collision between two colossal figures of American culture: Jon Stewart, the revered satirist, the conscience of a generation, and Elon Musk, the visionary industrialist, the self-proclaimed free speech absolutist. Their arena was not a Roman Colosseum, but the sleek, unforgiving landscape of Silicon Valley and the global network of X, the platform Musk had controversially acquired. The stakes were higher than mere ratings or stock prices. They were about the very definition of free speech in the 21st century. A partnership was forged. A new show was promised, one that would bring Stewart's incisive wit to the platform Musk heralded as the world's last bastion of open discourse. But then, in a flash of digital lightning, it was all torn down. The show was canceled before it truly began, leaving a crater in the landscape of media and tech. This is the story of that clash, a fiery, high-stakes confrontation that ended with one man silencing the other. Was it a simple business disagreement, a clash of incompatible egos? Or was it something more profound, a moment that exposed the inherent paradox of a billionaire controlling the microphone he offers to the world? Let's dissect the moment a joke became too expensive, and a king allegedly silenced his court jester. The year is 2024. America is a fractured mirror, reflecting 1,000 different realities back at itself. The air is thick with political tension, a low hum of anxiety that vibrates from the concrete canyons of New York City to the sun-baked sprawl of Austin, Texas. It is in this charged atmosphere that our two protagonists are preparing for their entanglement, each existing in a world that could not be more different from the others. Miles away from the heart of the tech revolution, on a quiet, sprawling farm in the rolling hills of New Jersey, Jon Stewart is rediscovering his voice. After his celebrated departure from The Daily Show, he had stepped away from the relentless grind of nightly television. His farm, a sanctuary for rescued animals, was a testament to a quieter life, a place of dirt, hay, and tangible reality. But the world outside his fences had grown louder, more chaotic. The political discourse he had so expertly dissected had devolved into a screaming match, and the truth itself seemed to be up for debate. His brief return to television with The Problem with Jon Stewart on Apple TV Plus had been a thoughtful, if less frenetic, continuation of his life's work. But even there, he felt the constraints of a traditional media giant. When that show ended, a new intriguing possibility emerged: a partnership with X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. On the surface, it seemed like a perfect, if strange, match. Elon Musk, the new owner, was championing X as a haven for unbridled expression, a place free from the sanitized, corporate-approved narratives of legacy media. For Stewart, a man who built his career on speaking truth to power without a filter, the proposition was tantalizing. Imagine the freedom to produce his signature brand of deep-dive satire completely uncensored on the world's most immediate and chaotic news source. He was cautiously optimistic. His team began working, sketching out ideas, planning a premiere episode that would, in classic Stewart fashion, tackle a complex and controversial subject head-on. In his mind, he was not entering the lion's den. He was being invited into a new kind of public park, one where all voices, especially critical ones, were supposedly welcome. Nearly 2,000 miles southwest in Austin, Texas, Elon Musk lived in a different reality altogether. His world was not one of quiet contemplation, but of perpetual high-stakes motion. His days were a blur of rocket launches, gigafactory production lines, and the endless churning vortex of X. Musk didn't just run companies, he was attempting to bend the future to his will. From the sterile humming halls of the Tesla Gigafactory, a structure so vast it felt like a city dedicated to the future of transportation, he presided over his sprawling empire. He saw himself not as a CEO, but as a general in a war against stagnation, against the forces that he believed were holding humanity back. His acquisition of Twitter was, in his eyes, a crucial battle in that war. He spent $44 billion, not just to buy a social media company, but to save civilization from what he termed the woke mind virus of censorship and narrative control. He saw X as an essential utility, a global town square, and he was its self-appointed protector. Yet this noble mission was fraught with immense pressure. Advertisers were skittish, user numbers were debated, and he was constantly fending off attacks from the media outlets he so deeply distrusted. In his mind, these weren't good faith critiques. They were targeted campaigns by entrenched interests who feared his disruption. He was the hero of his own epic, a lone innovator fighting against a tide of Luddites and cynics. When the deal with Jon Stewart was brought to him, he likely saw it as a coup. Bringing a respected, albeit liberal voice like Stewart to X would be a powerful symbol of his commitment to free speech. It would show the world that X was truly a platform for everyone, not just his supporters. He was offering Stewart a stage, and in return he expected perhaps he expected a level of gratitude. Perhaps he expected a partner. What he did not expect was to become the target. The spark that ignited the fire wasn't a boardroom memo or a heated phone call, but the taping of the very first episode. In a studio in New York under the bright, unforgiving lights, Jon Stewart did what he has always done. He took aim at the powerful. The chosen topic was artificial intelligence. It was a subject ripe for dissection, a swirling vortex of utopian promises and dystopian fears. And at the center of that vortex, inescapably, was Elon Musk. Stewart's monologue was a masterclass in satirical deconstruction. He began with praise, a classic Stewart setup acknowledging the breathtaking ambition behind projects like Neuralink and SpaceX. He painted a picture of the future Musk so often described, a gleaming, efficient world of seamless technology and interplanetary travel. The audience was with him, laughing, nodding along. Then came the turn. With the precision of a surgeon, Stewart began to peel back the layers of hype. He juxtaposed Musk's grand pronouncements about AI saving humanity with clips of Tesla's full self-driving feature, making comical and sometimes terrifying errors. "They call it full self-driving," Stewart quipped, a wry smile playing on his lips. Which is interesting, because from what I can see, it requires you to keep your full self ready to grab the wheel so you don't drive into a farmer's market. That's not a feature that's like hiring a co-pilot who's been drinking. The laughter was explosive, but it was layered with a nervous recognition. He wasn't just telling jokes, he was pointing out a chasm between marketing and reality. He questioned the messianic narrative surrounding tech founders, asking if placing the fate of humanity in the hands of a few unelected billionaires was truly a step forward. He ended by directly addressing Musk's persona. He is brilliant. But the idea that any one person can have all the answers and that their platform is the only place for true free speech, while they also happen to sell the cars, the rockets, and the brain chips, well, that's not a town square, that's a company town. The raw footage didn't take long to travel the digital superhighway to Austin. Inside a minimalist, glass-walled conference room at the Gigafactory, an aide hesitantly played the clip on a large monitor for Musk. As Stewart's face filled the screen, Musk's own expression remained impassive, almost unnervingly still. He wasn't watching a comedy special, he was analyzing a threat vector. The laughter from the studio audience seemed to echo mockingly in the silent room. Every punchline that landed on Tesla or his public statements was, in his perception, a direct blow to his life's work. This wasn't a critique. It was an attack. This wasn't satire. It was sabotage funded by his own money on his own platform. The initial vision of a prestigious partnership evaporated, replaced by the cold sting of betrayal. The first communication was subtle, wrapped in the velvet glove of corporate diplomacy. An email arrived in the inbox of Stewart's executive producer. It came from a high-level executive at X. The language was careful. "We've reviewed the initial cut. Great energy. We have a few notes on the tone. The focus on Mr. Musk and Tesla feels disproportionately critical and may alienate a significant portion of the audience we're trying to cultivate. We'd suggest a broader, more balanced perspective on the AI landscape." Stewart's team knew exactly what this meant. It was the first push, the gentle but firm suggestion to pull back to soften the blow. Their response was polite but unyielding. "Thank you for the feedback. We feel the episode as is represents the core of what this show is, a comedic, critical look at issues of power. Jon's creative independence was a cornerstone of our agreement." The volley had been returned. Back in Austin, Musk saw this refusal not as a defense of artistic integrity, but as an act of defiance. The pretense of notes was dropped. The next round of communication sources would later say was more direct. The message, paraphrased through intermediaries, was clear. The content is a problem. It is a targeted, negative portrayal. It cannot run as it is. The battle lines were being drawn. For Stewart and his team, this was a fundamental breach of principle. They had a deal, and the deal was for an unfiltered Jon Stewart. To compromise would be to gut the very soul of the project. For Musk, Stewart was now acting not like a partner, but like an adversary. An adversary using Musk's own resources against him. The tension, once a low hum, was now a high-pitched scream, building toward an inevitable explosive confrontation. The stalemate couldn't last. The back and forth through deputies and emails was a prelude to the inevitable main event. A video conference was scheduled. It was the digital equivalent of meeting at dawn for a duel. On one screen from a stark minimalist office, overlooking the vast robotic ballet of the Gigafactory floor in Austin, was Elon Musk. He was framed by the future he was building, a solitary figure, against a backdrop of immense scale and power. On the other screen, from a cluttered but functional production office in New York, was Jon Stewart, flanked by his trusted producers. He was in his element, a workshop of ideas, surrounded by his team. There was no preamble, no polite chatter about the weather. Musk's face was a granite mask of control. "Jon," he began, his voice flat and devoid of warmth, "we have a fundamental misalignment." "A misalignment?" Stewart countered, leaning into his camera, his own expression one of searching disbelief. "Elon, I was under the impression I was brought on to do a show. The show is my perspective. That's the product. You saw my work. You knew what you were getting." "I knew I was getting a comedian," Musk retorted, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I did not know I was funding a bad faith hit piece. Your episode isn't a balanced look at AI. It's a direct, cynical attack on my companies and on me personally. You use out-of-context clips and simplistic arguments to paint a narrative of failure and deceit. It's the exact kind of legacy media playbook I created this platform to get away from." Stewart's team shifted uncomfortably, but he remained calm, his voice steady. "Elon, it's satire. It's comedy. And yes, it's a critique. That's its function. For 20 years, my job has been to hold powerful people and institutions accountable, whether they're presidents, senators, or Wall Street bankers. Why is the CEO of the world's most important car company and the owner of the global town square exempt from that? Because it's counterproductive." Musk's voice rose, for the first time a flicker of raw frustration breaking through the icy composure. "You are discouraging innovation. You're telling millions of people that the efforts to solve some of humanity's biggest challenges are a joke. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and throw rocks. It's hard to be in the arena, building things." This was the core of their divide. Musk saw it as builder versus critic. Stewart saw it as power versus accountability. "The man in the arena," Stewart said, nodding slowly, recognizing the reference. "I respect the man in the arena, but the man in the arena has to be able to take a punch, especially when he owns the arena, the boxing gloves, and the television rights. You can't declare yourself the free speech absolutist and then cancel the first person who uses that freedom to criticize you. It undermines the entire premise of what you claim to be doing. He leaned forward again, his voice dropping to a more personal, almost pleading tone. This is the ultimate test. Don't you see? A show that's critical of you on your platform. Allowing this to air would be the single most powerful statement you could make that you are serious about your principles. Killing it. Well, that also makes a very powerful statement. There was a long, humming silence. The only sound was the faint, distant whir of machinery from Musk's factory. He stared at Stewart's image on the screen, his expression unreadable. For a moment it seemed as if Stewart's appeal to Musk's own stated ideology might break through. It was a direct challenge to his identity. Was he the savior of free speech, or just another powerful man protecting his image? Musk's face hardened, the brief flicker of conflict replaced by a cold, final resolve. He had made his decision. He was not just a CEO making a business call. He was a gatekeeper, rendering a judgment. The narrative you are presenting is a lie. Musk stated, each word delivered like a block of ice. It is not a good faith critique. It is a calculated falsehood designed to harm my companies and misinform the public. I will not use my resources and I will not use my platform to host and broadcast a lie. He paused, letting the weight of his verdict settle in the digital space between them. The partnership is terminated. He didn't wait for a response. His hand moved and, with a single decisive click, the screen went black. The call was over. In the New York office, there was a collective, sharp intake of breath. Stewart leaned back in his chair, staring at the blank monitor, where the world's richest man had just been. He didn't look angry. He looked weary, profoundly and utterly weary. He slowly shook his head, a grim, humorless smile touching his lips. He had his answer. The jester had told his joke, and the king, far from laughing, had simply ordered the stage to be dismantled. The silence left by the terminated video call was quickly filled by a deafening roar. Within hours, the story was everywhere. It didn't leak. It was released, a controlled detonation by Stewart's team, who understood that in a war of narratives, the first one to speak often wins. Elon Musk cancels Jon Stewart's show on X after episode critical of CEO, blared the headlines on the websites of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. The digital world fractured instantly along predictable fault lines. On X, Musk's digital kingdom, the wagons circled. His platform, his rules, became the rallying cry tweeted and retweeted thousands of times. Musk himself led the charge not with a press release but with a series of sharp, defiant posts. He framed the cancellation as a sound business decision, an act of quality control. Just to be clear, he posted to his millions of followers, I did not cancel Jon Stewart. I chose not to enter into a commercial partnership with someone producing a show that was frankly not very funny and based on a false narrative. X will not fund propaganda from legacy media. He retweeted supporters who called Stewart a has-been and a shill, amplifying a chorus of voices that confirmed his own version of events. Within the walls of his own platform, he was not a censor. He was a curator of truth, protecting his users from misinformation. Everywhere else, however, the perception was starkly different. For critics, this was the ultimate I told you so moment. The free speech absolutist label was now used as a cudgel against him, a symbol of profound hypocrisy. On rival social media platforms, in news segments, and in podcasts, the story was framed as a textbook case of a thin-skinned billionaire silencing a voice that dared to question him. Comedians and commentators rushed to Stewart's defense not just out of professional solidarity, but because the incident touched a raw nerve about the nature of power in the modern age. Then Jon Stewart made his move. He didn't just fade away or complain from the sidelines. He took the forbidden episode, the very piece of content deemed too dangerous for X, and uploaded it directly to YouTube. It was a masterstroke. The episode, now imbued with the allure of being the show Elon Musk didn't want you to see, went supernova. It garnered tens of millions of views in a matter of days, far more than it likely would have received on X. Stewart's surgical critique of AI AI hype and Tesla's promises was now consumed by a massive global audience, its points amplified by the controversy of its birth. In a follow-up interview, Stewart was measured, not vengeful. "I'm not angry," he explained, his tone more academic than accusatory. "I'm fascinated. We were given a chance to test a hypothesis. Can a powerful entity truly foster a space for open criticism of itself? We got our answer. The experiment is over. The data is in." He had lost the show, but he had won the argument in the most public way imaginable. His reputation as a fearless truth-teller was not just preserved, it was forged anew in the fires of this very public clash. He had proven his point more effectively than any monologue could have. The concentration of power, whether in government or in the hands of a tech mogul, is inherently at odds with genuine free expression. For Musk, life went on. The rocket still launched, the cars still rolled off the assembly line, and X continued to operate under his absolute control. He had successfully purged the dissenting voice from his platform. In his world, he had won. He had protected his vision and his companies from an unfair attack. But outside his curated reality, a shadow lingered. The incident had put an indelible asterisk next to his name. He was still the visionary, the innovator, the industrialist. But for millions, he was also the man who couldn't take a joke. He remained the king of his digital castle, but the world now saw the height of its walls and the depth of its moat more clearly than ever before. He had preserved control, but at the cost of credibility. The episode became a powerful lesson, a real-time parable for the digital age. It revealed that the greatest threat to free speech isn't always a tyrannical government, but can sometimes be the benevolent dictator of the platform itself, the one who offers you a microphone but keeps his hand on the power switch. The message was clear, true. Freedom of speech is not a feature you can program. It's a principle you must endure, especially when it's your own name being called into question. So where does this story leave us? In the aftermath of this high-profile collision, we are left with a series of crucial, uncomfortable questions. Who was ultimately right in this clash of titans? Was Elon Musk, the builder, justified in protecting his creation from what he perceived as a destructive narrative? Or did he, the self-proclaimed champion of free speech, betray his own most sacred principle at the first sign of a real challenge? This wasn't just a spat between two famous men. It was a microcosm of the great debate of our time. Can a public square truly be a public square when one person holds the deed? Where is the line between moderating content and outright censorship? We genuinely want to know what you think. Was Musk's action a necessary business decision or an act of ego? Was Stewart a truth-teller or an unfair aggressor? Let us know your unfiltered thoughts in the comments section below. If this story gave you food for thought and you appreciate deep dives that go beyond the headlines, do us a favor and hit that like button. Share it with a friend who enjoys a complex debate, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next investigation into the forces that shape our world. But beyond the likes and subscribes, there is one core lesson to take away from the saga of Musk and Stewart. It's a lesson that is more valuable than ever. In an age where billionaires can buy our town squares and control the megaphones, our most important defense is our own critical thinking. The story teaches us to question everything, not just the content we consume, but the motives of those who provide it. It's a reminder that true freedom of thought doesn't come from a benevolent platform owner. It comes from our own relentless willingness to challenge narratives, especially the ones that are the most powerful. Question the jester, question the king. And in doing so, you'll find the truth that belongs to you.